Hi, Bill Barber from Poliigon here. In this video we're going to take a look at how to properly make use of displacement textures in Cinema4D with Cycles. Before we get started though, let's take a look at the material that we're going to be working on. It's this one, Ground Asphalt Broken 001. And as you can see from this preview here, it has quite a nice amount of displacement. But to see this in Cinema4D and Cycles, we are going to need to add in a few more nodes and settings than we have in the previous videos. Anyway, let's head over to Cinema4D and get started. Okay, so I've set up a simple scene. It's just a plane and some HDR lighting, pretty much identical to the previous tutorial. Different material though, which I've already inputted, following the exact same steps as the wooden floor material that I did previously. And if we give it a render now, we'll see that the material looks nice, but has no displacement. It's very, very flat looking, which really sells this particular material short. And you will find that some of our materials, you really don't need to bother with this step, like a flat wooden floor. That would really be overkill. But on something like this, without displacement, you're just not going to get the look that was intended. So what do we do? Let's load up the material. I'm just going to make some room here so I can zoom in so you can see it, and we'll start by bringing in our displacement texture. So I'll just drag that to here. Oh dear. And then head over to the node settings and load in our displacement texture. Of course my file system isn't in the right place. Why would it be? There we go. And as you can see here, we've got two displacement textures to choose from. Since we can use the 16-bit one, we're going to, because it just offers a better quality and a better level of displacement, assuming the subdivision is there to make use of it. But we'll cover that in a minute. And there we go. So we have the displacement texture loaded in. Next, we're going to, I'll minimize that just to keep it out of the way. In fact, no, because I'm going to need to take that online. We need the displacement node, this thing here, which I'm going to place underneath the principled shader and feed the displacement texture into the into the height value of the displacement. And then under the texture settings here, I'm going to change the color space to non-color data. This obviously won't influence the color of our material at all, so we don't want any color corrections to be applied. We just want the raw data. Now that's in place, I'm going to feed the displacement value from this node into the displacement input of the output node. Yeah, there we go. So that's literally all we have to do in the material nodes. What I will do though is also connect up this, so if we make any adjustments to scaling, it will be reflected. And as you can see, I actually have adjusted the scaling here to 0.3, that's what happened to fit the plane that I put in place. But other than that, it's all as default. Just minimize that down, and then that's our material sorted. But if I hit render now, we shouldn't see anything different at all, and we don't. And there's two reasons for that. One, we haven't turned on displacement. The material's just still set to use bump mapping only, and also we don't have enough geometry to work with. So let's fix both of those issues. First, in the material settings here, you'll see displacement method. We want to change that to both. That will then make use of both normal maps and true physical displacement. And if we were to render now, you'd probably see a slight difference, but yeah, not exactly great. Looks like a sort of a 1990s game almost, or maybe early 2000s, but yeah, certainly not what we're looking for. But you can see it is physically distorting the geometry, but because it's a low resolution plane, there's not enough vertices to work with. So what we need to do is subdivide this. Now we have a feature called adaptive subdivision with Cycles, and that's what we're going to make use of. So right mouse button on the plane object, go to Cycles, and then we want to add in a object tag. There we go. With that added, we've now got this panel. We've got a number of panels, but the one we want to pay attention to, is displacement. And then you've got this subdivision type. Now we're going to turn that to linear. You could use Captain Clark, but that will kind of round everything off, which works great in some circumstances, but when we're working on a plane like this, I'm not quite sure how the geometry will look. So we're just going to put that to linear, which means it will just subdivide it. It won't try and smooth out any of the subdivisions. You then have this rather vague number called dicing scale. And that's basically your control of the subdivision. A lower value will be more subdivision, so it's backwards. Yeah. Now a value of 1 is actually really high. That's a lot of displacement. So we want to turn that down a bit, i.e. increase the number. I find a level of 3 is usually fairly good to work with, but you can easily adjust this afterwards to get the look you want. But with those settings in place, now when we hit render, we should see a very different result. He says hopefully. And yeah, brilliant. Obviously it's not great due to the strength of the displacement, but we've quite clearly got loads more geometry to work with now, so it's just a matter of tweaking. So now if we go into our material again and go to the displacement node, we have this scale factor. Let's turn that down to something like 0.3-ish, something like that, and hit render again, and that should, yeah, not bad. That's looking quite good. I'd still turn it down just a little bit, maybe 0.25 or something, but yeah, you get the idea. I think for the purposes of a tutorial, that is fine. So in summary, we've taken what we learned from the previous videos, i.e. how to bring in a material, and kind of built on top of that by adding in a displacement map and setting up the object tag and material settings to properly support displacement.